The sky over Lagos cracked with thunder, casting sharp flashes of lightning across the high-rise buildings that stood like glass giants in the heart of the city. Rain began to pour with a vengeance, beating down on rooftops, roads, and windshields with cold, unrelenting fingers. Beneath the angry clouds, the streets shimmered with water and broken reflections of headlights, traffic signals, and people rushing to shelter. In a slick black Jaguar, Raymond Adewale gripped the steering wheel tighter. At just 29 years old, Raymond was already one of Nigeria's youngest tech billionaires, a name etched in the business world like gold. Dressed in a perfectly tailored navy blue suit, his silver watch shimmered every time the lightning struck. But his calm exterior was cracking. His car had just let out a strange mechanical groan, then stopped. Dead. He frowned, turned the ignition again, and the dashboard blinked in silence. He checked the fuel. Full. The battery indicator? Fine. But the engine wouldn't budge. "Not now," he muttered, pulling out his phone to call his driver. No signal. He let out a frustrated breath and stepped out of the car, the rain drenching him within seconds. The wealthy genius who once stood on magazine covers now stood in a puddle, his leather shoes sinking slightly into the mud at the roadside. There were no streetlights in this stretch, just the distant glow of buildings far behind him. No passing cars, no shops open, no sign of help. Raymond lifted the hood and stared blankly at the engine like a man examining a foreign language. Despite being a tech genius, he knew nothing about engines. Everything had always been done for him. Drivers, assistants, personal mechanics. He had never needed to know what to do when a car broke down. Until now. Minutes passed, then more minutes, then half an hour. His jacket clung to his back, rain soaking him to the bone. The city noise had died here. It was as if time itself stood still on that deserted stretch of road. That's when he saw her. Across the road, under a bridge that had seen better days, someone stepped out from the shadows. A girl. She was barefoot, her clothes thin and worn out, soaked through from the rain. Her dark hair was messy, stuck to her cheeks. She looked no older than 24, and her eyes, though tired, held a strange brightness. A plastic bag hung from her wrist, and she shivered slightly in the cold. Raymond's instincts kicked in. "What's she doing out here?" he thought. Then the darker side of his thoughts whispered, "Could be dangerous. Thief. Scam." But before he could step back or speak, the girl called out gently, "Sir, do you need help?" Her voice was soft. So soft that the rain almost drowned it out. Raymond blinked. "Excuse me?" She stepped closer, hands slightly raised to show she meant no harm. "Your car looks like you're stuck." He frowned. "You know about cars?" She smiled weakly. "A little. My father used to fix motorcycles before he died. I watched him a lot." Raymond stared at her. She looked like she hadn't eaten in days. Her slippers were mismatched. Her nails had dirt beneath them. But something in her calmness, something in the way she didn't beg, didn't flinch, made him pause. "Name?" he asked, not unkindly. "Lena," she said simply. He hesitated, then stepped aside. "Be my guest." Lena walked to the front of the car slowly, her footsteps careful on the wet ground. She peered into the engine with more confidence than he expected. She touched nothing at first, just observed. Then gently she adjusted a loose wire near the battery connector, pressed down a terminal, and stepped back. "Try it now," she said, wiping her hands on her shirt. Raymond raised an eyebrow. He got in, turned the key, and the engine roared to life. His mouth fell open. He stepped out again, staring at her. "You actually fixed it?" Lena nodded shyly. "It was just a connection. Wet roads. Maybe it got knocked loose." He reached into his wallet, pulled out a thick stack of notes and handed it to her. "Take this. You deserve it." But she stepped back. "No, sir. I didn't help for money." He was stunned. "Why then?" She looked him in the eye. "Because you needed help, and I could help. That's enough." Raymond stood speechless. In a world where everything had a price, this girl had just given him something priceless. He reached into his coat and pulled out his business card. "Then take this. Come see me at my office tomorrow." Lena stared at the card like it was made of glass. "I won't forget you," Raymond added. "Don't forget this moment." With a small nod, Lena tucked the card into the plastic bag hanging from her wrist and turned to walk back into the darkness beneath the bridge. Raymond watched her until she disappeared into the shadows. He didn't know her story. He didn't know her pain. But something in him whispered. This was not the last time he'd see her. That night, Lena sat beneath the bridge where she had made her little home. 2 old sacks formed her bed, and a broken umbrella served as her roof. She opened her plastic bag, took out the business card, and looked at the name, Raymond Attawale, CEO, A-Tech Dynamics. The paper felt too clean for her fingers. The world had never offered her much. Her mother had died during childbirth. Her father died when she was 16. Since then, Lena had lived from street to street, cleaning stalls, collecting bottles, sometimes going hungry for days. Yet she had never stolen, never begged. She believed in dignity, even when no one believed in her. She held the card tightly. Tomorrow. Could she really go? Would they even let her in? But she remembered something her father once told her. Courage? Lena is not loud. It's the quiet step you take when no one sees you. She placed the card beneath her clothes to keep it dry, then whispered to herself, "I'll go." The next morning, Lena washed her face in the nearby pump water, straightened her shirt as best she could, and made the long walk to A-Tech Dynamics. When she reached the main gates, her heart pounded. The building stood like a palace, glass. Walls, expensive cars parked outside, security guards in uniforms. She suddenly felt very small. She clutched the card and stepped forward. But the moment the guards saw her, they stepped in front of the gate. "Hey, where do you think you're going?" one of them barked. I came to see Mr. Raymond," she said, voice shaking. The second guard laughed. "Are you mad? Do you think the CEO talks to people like you?" Lena tried to explain. "He gave me this card. Last night, I helped. Move back." The first one shouted, "Go before we call the police." People nearby began to stare. Lena lowered her head, humiliated. Behind a third-floor window, Raymond sipped his morning coffee. Then he saw movement near the gate. A girl, a familiar figure, froze. It was her. "Lena," he whispered aloud. Without thinking, he put down the coffee and rushed to the elevator. But it was too slow, so he took the stairs, 3 at a time, heart pounding. Outside, the guards were still yelling. Then the glass doors burst open. Raymond ran out, rain-soaking his shirt once more. "She's with me," he shouted. The guards turned, stunned. "Sir?" one of them stammered. "I said, she's with me. Open the gate." Lena stood frozen as the metal gate swung open. Raymond walked to her, held out his hand, and said softly, "I was hoping you'd come." And as the city buzzed around them, a single moment stitched 2 different worlds together. His world of wealth, her world of shadows. And neither of their lives would ever be the same again. The sky had softened by the time Raymond led Lena through the shimmering glass doors of A-Tech Dynamics. The same guards who had shouted at her now stood stiff, their eyes wide, shame burning across their faces. One of them tried to mumble an apology, but Raymond didn't even glance his way. He walked beside Lena, slow and sure, like a man leading someone important, not just into a building, but into a new life. Lena had never felt more out of place. The polished floor gleamed beneath her sandals. Her wet, faded clothes stood in painful contrast against the marble and suits. The lobby smelled of expensive perfume and fresh coffee. Employees passed by with sleek laptops and shiny shoes, whispering and glancing. She walked with her eyes downcast, her plastic bag clenched tightly, in her hand like a lifeline. "Don't worry," Raymond whispered beside her, his voice calm as if he could sense her thoughts. "They'll forget about the whispers soon enough. Let your actions speak." He led her to the elevator. It was made of glass, and as it rose, the entire city stretched beneath them. Lena's eyes widened. She had never been this high above the ground before. She pressed her lips together, trying not to gape at the glittering skyline. When they reached the top floor, Raymond gestured for her to enter his office. She hesitated at the doorway. It felt like entering a dream. The walls were lined with shelves of books, awards, and models of Raymond's tech projects, futuristic solar chargers, artificial intelligence software prototypes, even a smart drone, hanging in a glass box. The giant windows let in a soft light, and the air inside felt clean and cold. "Come in," he said gently. "Sit." Lena nodded and walked in slowly, her fingers brushing the armrest of the chair before sitting down. Raymond sat opposite her, folding his hands together. He looked at her differently now, not just with gratitude but curiosity. "Tell me something," he asked. "What were you doing out on that road last night?" Lena's eyes flicked to the floor. "I live under the bridge," she said softly. "I don't beg. I just find small work where I can, clean stalls, wash buses, sometimes carry bags in the market." He stayed silent, listening. "My father used to fix bikes," she continued. "He taught me a few things before he died. After that, I didn't have anyone. I tried to stay honest. I believe God watches, even when the world doesn't." Raymond sat back in his chair, absorbing every word. "You fixed my car like a pro," he said finally. Lena smiled weakly. "It wasn't a big fix, sir." "But it meant the world to me at that moment," he replied. "And you refused money. That says a lot." Lena lowered her eyes again. She wasn't used to compliments. Raymond reached for a folder on his desk and opened it. "I want to make you an offer," he said. Lena looked up, confused. "I run a garage on the ground floor of this building, our in-house auto unit for staff and company vehicles. It's clean, safe, and the people there are respectful. They need someone to help clean, manage tools, maybe assist with minor repairs." Lena blinked, unsure if she heard correctly. "You'll get a monthly salary," he continued, "and more. Importantly, a place to stay. We have small staff rooms in the back of the building. It's simple, but it's a real bed, real food, and peace." Lena swallowed. "Sir, why are you helping me?" Raymond gave a small smile. "Because someone once helped me when I was younger. I wouldn't be here without that man. And because I believe people like you, people with quiet strength, deserve chances." Tears welled in Lena's eyes before she quickly blinked them away. She nodded slowly. "I'll work hard, sir," she whispered. "I know you will," Raymond replied. Later that afternoon, a short man named Patrick, foreman of the garage, met Lena outside the staff quarters. He was in his late 40s, bald, with a large stomach and a voice like thunder. "You the new girl?" he asked, squinting. "Yes, sir," Lena said nervously. He looked her up and down, grunted, and nodded. "We start early, 5 in the morning. Tools must be in place, floors swept, don't break anything." "I won't," she said quickly. He handed her a blue apron with the A-Tech logo. "Wear this. Your room is down that hall. Room 4B. Lena walked into her new room with shaking hands. It was small but clean. A bed, a fan, a bathroom. For the first time in years, she didn't have to sleep in fear of rats or cold rain. She dropped to her knees and whispered a prayer of thanks. The next few days tested her strength. Every morning at 5, she swept the garage floors, wiped oil stains, and arranged the tools. The mechanics eyed her at first, amused by the idea of a girl doing dirty work. But Lena didn't complain. She learned their names. She brought them water. She helped carry heavy toolboxes. Raymond didn't visit the garage directly, but one morning. He watched from a balcony as Lena carefully polished the rims of a company SUV. She was focused, her forehead dotted with sweat. Her hands moved with care, not laziness. He smiled quietly and walked back into his office. Word began to spread across departments. The girl who came from nowhere, now working in the garage. She fixed the boss's car. No way. He probably just pities her. Some whispered with admiration, others with envy. Cassie, Raymond's personal assistant, listened from her office and frowned. She had been with the company for 3 years, always wore perfect makeup, always wore heels. That clicked across the marble. She had once hoped Raymond would notice her, but he never did. Now this girl from the street? She couldn't stand it. One afternoon, Raymond called Lena to his office again. "Sir?" she asked, standing in the doorway. He pointed to the seat. "Sit, Lena." She did, nervously. "I want to ask you something," he said. "Would you like to study again?" Her eyes widened. "School?" she echoed. "Yes," Raymond said. "I'll get a private tutor to come to your room twice a week. You can finish secondary school, then maybe university. What do you think?" Lena's mouth opened, but no words came out. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "I never thought I would ever go back." Raymond smiled gently. "Then let's make it happen." She covered her mouth with her hand, trying not to cry. "Thank you," she said. "No, Lena," he replied. "Thank you for reminding me what grace looks like." That night, Lena sat on her bed in her staff room with a notebook and pencil. The tutor had given her assignments. Her handwriting was shaky, but her answers were sharp. She read late into the night, the same way she used to read old magazines she'd find in the trash near newsstands. Outside her window, the city sparkled. She looked out and whispered to herself, "I will rise." But not everyone wanted her to rise. One of the janitors saw Cassie in the hallway the next morning, whispering with another assistant. "She doesn't even belong here," Cassie hissed. "Garage girl, what's next? CEO's wife?" They laughed cruelly. From behind a pillar, Lena overheard them. She didn't say anything. She just turned away quietly and cleaned the floors with more strength than before. In the days that followed, Raymond began inviting Lena to his office more often, to check her progress, to ask if she needed anything, to ask about her lessons. But slowly their conversations became less formal. He began asking about her favorite food, her childhood, her dreams. One afternoon, he smiled and asked, "If you could do anything in the world, what would it be?" Lena looked out the window, then whispered, "Build things. Maybe machines. I don't know. I just like fixing things." He nodded. "Then let's make sure you get there." Cassie watched, it all from behind her fake smile and perfect nails, and something dark began to build inside her. The days turned into weeks, and the dusty corners of the A-Tech garage had never been cleaner. Every wrench, every screw, every bolt sparkled under the soft LED lights that lined the ceiling. Lena had made the garage her world, and every inch of it reflected her quiet determination. She woke before sunrise, prayed with whispered hopes, cleaned with hands that never complained, and learned with a heart that refused to stop dreaming. Every night she sat under the yellow bulb of her small staff room, poring over books the private tutor brought, mathematics, science, mechanical diagrams. She read them slowly, lips moving, finger tracing every line like a child learning to see again. Raymond noticed. More than once, he stood from the top-floor balcony and watched her unnoticed, mopping oil-stained tiles in the early light, pushing. A cart of tools heavier than her frame, kneeling beside tires and lifting panels just to understand how they worked. One afternoon, when the garage was unusually quiet, Patrick, the foreman, ran into his office, waving a dirty rag. "Sir," he said breathlessly, "you won't believe it. The new girl, Lena, she just changed a flat tire, all by herself." Raymond raised an eyebrow, smiling slightly. "That's so?" "And faster than James," Patrick added, laughing. "I think our boys are getting jealous." Raymond didn't say much, but inside, pride bloomed like sunrise. Later that day, Raymond strolled down to the garage. He watched as Lena tightened a bolt and dusted her hands. She didn't see him coming. Only when he said, "You're becoming a real mechanic now," did she look up, startled. She laughed shyly. "I'm trying, sir." "Where did you learn? All this?" he asked. She stood up, wiping her hands on her apron. "When I was younger, I used to help a man named Baba Cola. He fixed tricycles in my neighborhood. I didn't have much to do after my father passed, so I just stayed at his shop. Watched. Helped. He used to say I had a gift." Raymond nodded. He was right. She looked away, but her lips curved upward. Praise was still something she didn't know how to receive. But word had begun to spread far beyond the garage. People in the offices above whispered about her. The girl in blue overalls who read textbooks. During lunch breaks, the homeless one who came with nothing and now walked with silent strength. Some admired her, some envied her, and some began to hate her. Cassie, the ever-perfect assistant with manicured nails and a closet full of designer dresses, seethed silently behind her polished desk. She had been loyal to Raymond for 3 years. She knew his routines, his favorite meals, his coffee order. She had waited for the day he might look at her as more than just a staff member. That day never came. Instead, a girl who walked in barefoot, with dirt under her nails and no degree, was the one who made him smile. Cassie watched, and she planned. She began dropping sly comments during meetings. "I saw you talking to the garage girl again, sir," she'd say sweetly. "She's really fitting in fast." Raymond would nod politely, not realizing the venom behind her. Smile. At lunch, she whispered to other staff members, "Isn't it strange? He never brings any of us lunch." But her? It worked. The whispers turned into jokes. "She's working in the garage, but I bet she's climbing the ladder through the boss. She came from the street, now she wants the penthouse. The worst part?" Lena heard it. One afternoon, she had gone to refill a toolbox upstairs and passed by the staff kitchen. As she stood at the water dispenser, she overheard 2 assistants laughing. "Next thing, she'll be running the company," one of them sneered. "Maybe she's already running the boss," the other said, giggling. Lena stood frozen. The water, cup in her hand, trembled. She returned to the garage that day quieter than usual. Her smile faded. Her shoulders drooped just a little. Patrick noticed. "Everything okay, girl?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes, sir." But inside, something cracked. That evening, Raymond invited Lena to his office. She walked in slowly, wiping, grease from her hands. She stood silently, waiting. Raymond looked up from his laptop and frowned. "Lena, something wrong?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "No, sir." But her eyes betrayed her. He stood and walked around the table. "You can tell me anything," he said. Her voice came out in a whisper. "I don't want to cause you trouble." "What do you mean?" "They're talking, sir. People, staff, about me, about you." Raymond sighed. "Let them talk. I don't want to be the reason people doubt your judgment," she said, looking down. "Maybe it's better if I stop coming to your office." Raymond stared at her for a long moment, then quietly said, "Do you know why I keep asking you? Here?" She said nothing. "Because I admire your strength, your kindness, your honesty. Those people talk because they see someone rising, and they're afraid." She looked up, surprised. "Never apologize for being excellent, Lena," he said gently. "You've earned everything. Don't let their noise silence your progress." She nodded slowly. That night, she opened her books with a stronger grip and decided no more hiding. A few days later, something unexpected happened. A senior mechanic slipped and dislocated his ankle while trying to lift a heavy compressor. Panic filled the garage. Workers ran around helplessly. The man groaned in pain. Before anyone could fetch help, Lena stepped forward. She picked up a steel rod, used it to lift the pressure, slid in a jack with precision, and relieved the weight. Then, she knelt beside the injured man and called out to Patrick, "Please get cold water and call HR for the ambulance." She tore a clean cloth from her apron and wrapped it gently around the man's ankle. Raymond had come down midway through the commotion. He stood behind everyone and watched her, leading, helping, caring. When the ambulance arrived, the workers clapped for Lena. She just smiled and returned to cleaning up the oil that had spilled on the floor. Raymond's chest swelled with pride. She's not just gifted, he thought. She's born to lead. That weekend, Raymond hosted a small dinner at his private residence. He invited key team leaders, engineers, and senior staff, and he included Lena. When her name appeared on the invite list, many scoffed. A garage. Girl? At the CEO's home? Cassie nearly dropped her coffee cup when she saw it. Is he serious? She whispered to herself. But Lena had no dress. When she arrived at the dinner wearing a simple navy blue gown Raymond's sister had helped her choose, every eye turned. She was quiet. She was modest. But she was radiant. She greeted people with respect, ate carefully, and laughed gently at the right moments. Raymond watched her all evening, not with romantic eyes, but with deep admiration. He saw the woman who had once walked barefoot in the rain, now walking through a room of millionaires with grace. Not once did Lena try to impress anyone. She didn't pretend, and that's what made her unforgettable. But after that night, the whispers returned louder. She's being groomed. She's after his money. Cassie, furious, decided it was time to act. She called a journalist she knew, a petty gossip blogger desperate for scandal. "I have a story," she said, voice cold, "about the billionaire and his garage girl." The morning after the dinner party felt colder than usual, not in temperature, but in tone. The company hallways buzzed not with routine tasks, but with murmurs too sharp to ignore. Lena walked past reception, holding her lunchbox tightly, pretending not to hear the sound of laughter behind her. She had always felt eyes on her since arriving at A-Tech. But now, those eyes were heavy, sharp, and cruel. In the elevator, two marketing interns barely whispered, "That's her, the girl from the garage. Did you read the blog post?" Lena lowered her eyes. When the elevator doors opened, Cassie stepped in. Her perfume was strong. Her smile was sharp. "Oh, Lena," she said, her voice fake sweet. "You look lovely today. Still cleaning up cars after dinner with billionaires?" Lena nodded politely, offering a neutral smile. "Good morning, Ma." Cassie tilted her head and leaned closer. "Be careful, dear. The higher you climb, the longer the fall." Lena didn't respond, but her hands trembled slightly as she held her lunchbox tighter. When she reached the garage, Patrick called her over. He scratched his bald head, nervous. Lena," he said. "HR wants to speak with you. 11 a.m. sharp. Don't worry. I think it's nothing." But it wasn't nothing. When Lena arrived at the HR office, she found two officers seated beside. "The HR manager," A printed copy of a viral blog post sat on the desk. Billionaire's dirty secret romance in the garage. The headline screamed in red. The article described Raymond as a naive CEO under the spell of a street-smart girl, claiming she was manipulating her way to power. It twisted the truth, called her a fraud, a social climber, a schemer. From the slums, Lena sat silently while the HR manager read it aloud. "We're not accusing you," she said stiffly, "but you understand this affects the company's image. Clients are calling. Shareholders are asking questions." Lena blinked, trying not to cry. "I didn't write that article. I never spoke to any reporter." One of the officers looked at her, slightly sympathetic. "We believe you, but the media doesn't care." The HR manager sighed. "You may need to take a break, for now, until things cool down." "A break?" Lena whispered. "But I didn't do anything." "It's not punishment," the manager said. "It's just damage control." Lena stood up slowly. "I see." She walked out of the office in silence. That evening, she returned to her staff room and closed the door. The room that once felt safe now felt small, stifling. She sat on the edge of the bed, took off her shoes, and stared at the wall. Hours passed. She didn't eat. She didn't speak. Outside, the city moved on, but inside her, something had broken. Raymond had been in meetings all morning. When Cassie came in, holding the same blog post, he barely glanced at it. "I've seen it," he said flatly. Cassie looked surprised. "Aren't you going to respond?" "I'm not playing their game, but people are talking." Raymond looked up, his eyes sharp. "Let them talk." Cassie's lips pressed into a thin line. "She's a distraction, sir." "She's a person," Raymond snapped. "And if I find out anyone here leaked anything, there will be consequences." Cassie left, her smile gone. By evening, Raymond walked down to the garage, but Lena was not there. He checked her room. The lights were off, the bed neatly made. He called her phone, switched off. Panic crept into his chest. He called Patrick. "Where's Lena?" Patrick scratched his head. "She left after work, quietly, didn't say a word." Raymond ran his fingers through his hair. "When?" "Around 6 p.m., sir. She looked different, not angry, just tired." Raymond walked out into the company courtyard. The wind carried the scent of rain and distant city smoke. He stood in the parking lot for an hour, waiting, hoping. She didn't return. That night, Lena walked for miles, past streetlights that flickered, past vendors packing up their carts, past children, selling peanuts by traffic lights. She had no plan, no destination, just her small bag, her tired shoes, and a heart weighed down with humiliation. She found an unfinished building near the edge of the city, nothing but pillars and cement. She sat against a wall, curled up beside a stack of bricks, and cried quietly. Not for attention, not for pity, just for release, for the next 3 days. Raymond didn't sleep properly. He visited the bridge where he first met her. He sat in his car in the rain, staring into the night. He sent drivers to nearby markets, train stations, bus parks, showing Lena's photo to anyone who would listen. Most people shook their heads. Some didn't care. The city was too big, too loud, too heartless. But Raymond didn't stop searching, not because he felt guilty, but because he missed her, not just her presence, but her peace, her laughter that was soft but real, her silence that made the world feel quiet. One morning, as Raymond sat on the stairs near the company's back gate, an old janitor approached. "Sir," he said, "sorry to disturb you, but I think I saw that girl." Raymond stood up instantly. "Where?" "On the outskirts," the man said. "I live near a construction site. She's been carrying cement there. Quiet girl. Same face. I'm almost sure." Raymond didn't even wait. He jumped into his car and drove. It took nearly an hour to reach the location. The sun was hot, the road dusty, the air thick with cement powder. Raymond stepped out of the car and scanned the workers, men with shovels, women with buckets. Then he saw her, Lena, wearing a torn scarf, a faded blouse, her hands covered in chalk. She carried a block on her head. Stepping carefully over mud and stones, Raymond's heart clenched. He stepped forward. "Lena!" he called out. She paused, slowly turned. Their eyes met. She lowered the block, knees trembling, then wiped her hands on her skirt, avoiding his gaze. "I didn't want you to find me," she said softly. Raymond stepped closer. "Why?" She shook her head. "I didn't belong in that world. Everyone said it. And I didn't want to bring you more shame." Raymond looked at her, at the dirt on her skin, the pain in her voice, the strength in her silence. "You didn't bring me shame. Lena," he said, "you brought me peace. You reminded me what real strength looks like." She finally looked up. Tears filled her eyes. "But your company, your image—" "I don't care what the world says," he interrupted. "I care what my heart knows." Silence stretched between them. Workers nearby had stopped to watch. Raymond didn't care. He took off his jacket, stepped closer, and gently held her hands. "Come home, Lena," he whispered. "Let me give you the life you deserve." Her voice cracked. "What if they talk again?" "They will," he said softly. "But this time, I won't stay silent." She cried quietly as he pulled her into a hug, his clean white shirt staining with cement. But he didn't let go. Not this time. And for the first time in weeks, Lena let someone hold her. Without fear, without shame, without walls. That evening, Raymond drove her to a small apartment complex managed by his younger sister, Ijoma. The space was simple but beautiful. White curtains, soft lighting, fresh bed sheets. Lena stepped in slowly, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I don't deserve this," she said. "Yes," Raymond replied. "You deserve more." And this time, she believed him. The next few months felt like a gentle sunrise after a long, cold night. Lena no longer woke to the sound of passing cars beneath a bridge, nor did she carry cement bags under the heat of a blazing sun. Instead, she woke each morning to the soft rustle of curtains, to the smell of clean linen, and to the quiet hum of possibility. Her small apartment, gifted by Raymond but managed by his younger sister Ijoma, became her safe place, her first real home. She kept it spotless, just like she did the garage. On one shelf sat her most treasured items, a small black notebook filled with mechanical drawings and ideas, a photograph of her father holding a wrench, and an A-Tech cap she found tucked into a drawer at the old garage, one she had refused to let go of. Raymond didn't hover. He didn't push. He respected her space. But his support was unwavering. Every 2 days, he would drop by after work, not as a billionaire CEO, but as a quiet friend who cared. "How's the prototype coming?" he'd ask gently. And Lena would light up. That was her new mission. After everything, after all the gossip, shame, and pain, Raymond had offered her something deeper than a title or a job, a purpose. He had arranged for her to train privately with the R&D engineers at A-Tech after hours. And for the first time, Lena didn't just clean tools, she used them. The garage that once knew her as the girl with a mop now saw her drafting circuit boards, dismantling power engines, and designing ideas most interns couldn't dream of. It started with a spark in her journal, a solar-powered mobile toolkit for roadside mechanics, lightweight, affordable, efficient. A mini garage in a box, she called it. She drew the model, then redrew it. Then built a paper prototype. Raymond saw it and was speechless. "This is brilliant," he whispered. "I just want to help the kind of people who helped me," Lena replied. From there, things moved quickly. Raymond brought in 2 engineers, Kalechi and Maria, to guide her through a test build. She listened more than she spoke, asked questions others were afraid to ask, and stayed up late tweaking designs. And then, it worked. The first functional prototype stood on her desk like a dream made real. When the board at ATEC saw it, they didn't just clap, they leaned in. "This girl," one executive whispered. "Isn't she the cleaner?" "No," Raymond replied. "She's the future." But success never travels alone. Cassie, once humiliated by Raymond's indifference and Lena's resilience, watched the transformation with a storm brewing in her chest. She had tried to destroy Lena with whispers, and now the girl was blooming, under lights Cassie believed were meant for her. "She's not just rising," Cassie said to another assistant one afternoon. "She's floating on his name," and once again, gossip twisted into poison. An anonymous online post appeared. "A tech promotes unqualified woman. Is it innovation or infatuation?" It wasn't as vicious as before, but it reopened old wounds. This time, Lena didn't cry. She read the article, closed the browser, and got back to work. "I won't be distracted," she told herself, because this time she had something stronger than public approval. She had purpose. The day of the internal company showcase arrived, a quarterly event where teams presented new ideas and products to investors and potential partners. It was Lena's first time on stage. She wore a white blouse and simple black trousers. No makeup, no heels. Just herself, and the prototype she had built with her hands and her heart. When she stepped on stage, the crowd murmured, "Isn't that her? The girl from the garage?" But Lena didn't tremble. She stood tall, voice steady. She spoke about her childhood, about roadside mechanics who struggled with rusty tools and no power, about ideas born from pain, about second chances, and about innovation that came from listening, not just inventing. She unveiled the solar toolkit and did a live demonstration. The audience gasped. It worked. Smooth, clean, powerful. Investors clapped. Employees nodded with respect. Even skeptics leaned forward. And when she stepped off stage, Raymond was waiting at the bottom of the steps. He didn't say a word. He just reached for her hand and whispered, "That was the most powerful thing I've seen in years." She looked at him with quiet gratitude, not because he believed in her, but because, finally, she believed in herself. Later that week, Raymond took Lena to the edge of the city, to a small orphanage he had helped fund years ago. "I want to show you something," he said as they entered. Children ran around the dusty yard playing with sticks and old footballs, but their eyes sparkled with joy. "This is where I started too," Raymond said. "I wasn't always a billionaire. I lost my parents when I was 10. I grew up right here." Lena looked at him in awe. "I always thought you were born into wealth," she said. He shook his head. "No. Someone gave me a scholarship when I was 17. That's how I got my first computer." They stood in silence for a moment. Then he added, "That's why I saw something in you, Lena. You reminded me of the version of myself I almost forgot." Tears touched the corner of her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. From there, everything changed. A tech officially launched Lena's product, orders poured in, international platforms requested interviews. She declined most of them. "I didn't build this for applause," she told Raymond. "I built this so the next Lena can keep her hands clean, her heart whole, and her future bright." Still, the world noticed. News articles began to call her the engineer who came from the streets. TEDx invited her to speak. Universities reached out with honorary scholarship offers. But Lena remained grounded. She still lived in the same apartment, still cleaned her own floors, still visited the garage weekly to say hello to Patrick and the old team. And she still quietly loved Raymond, though she never said it. Not yet. Not even to herself. because love, to her, had always felt like a luxury too big for someone who once shared her dinner with rats under a bridge. But it was there, in the way she smiled when he walked into a room, in the way he paused when she spoke, as if her words carried more weight than gold, in the way silence between them never felt empty, but full. One night, while they sat beneath the stars on a rooftop garden Raymond had built himself, he turned to her. "Do you know what I see when I look at you?" he asked. She shook her head. "I see grace that refuses to break," he said, "and I see a girl who once fixed a stranger's car in the rain and ended up fixing his heart." Lena didn't reply. She couldn't. She just stared at the sky, as her tears fell, soft, quiet, and free. It was a slow Sunday morning, and the city was still stretching from its slumber. The air was soft, the kind that carried no noise, just peace. On the quiet balcony of her apartment, Lena sat with a warm cup of cocoa in her hands, wearing a light sweater over her cotton dress. The city below was still moving, but inside her, something had finally become still. No more running, no more hiding. She belonged now, not just in a room or a job or a building, but in a life. A gentle knock on the door broke her thoughts. She already knew it was him, Raymond. He didn't need to call anymore. He just showed up, never uninvited, never loud. He walked in like the morning sun, familiar, bright, and impossible to ignore. In his hands was a brown paper bag. Breakfast. He smiled. "My sister made a cara." Lena laughed softly. "You brought me street food in a bag and you're smiling like it's gold." "It is gold," he replied, "especially when you eat it with someone you like." She rolled her eyes, but her heart was warm. They ate together on the balcony, watching clouds drift over rooftops. No meetings, no schedules. Just two people who once lived in two different worlds, now sitting side by side, feet bare, hearts open. After breakfast, Raymond pulled out something from his back pocket. It was an envelope. "What's that?" Lena asked, eyeing it curiously. "I want to show you something," he said, handing it over. She opened it slowly. Inside was a single sheet of paper, official, stamped, formal. Her name was written in bold letters at the top. Lena Okafor, approved for full scholarship, Bachelor of Engineering, University of Lagos. She gasped. "You applied?" "For me?" He nodded. "You've done the work. This was just the next step." Her fingers trembled as she held the paper. She looked up, her eyes glassy. "Raymond, this is too much." He leaned forward. "No, too much is what life has done to you before. This," he tapped the paper gently, "is what you deserve." Her voice cracked. "I don't even have the words." "Then don't say anything," he whispered. "Just live it." A few weeks later, Lena stood on the university's campus for the first time, wearing jeans and a blue blouse. She had a backpack slung over her shoulder, her black notebook tucked safely inside. She looked like every other student, except she wasn't. She had once fixed a billionaire's car in the dark. She had once slept on cold concrete, her stomach aching from hunger. She had once been laughed at, doubted, and discarded. Now she walked through gates that were once meant for someone else, and they stayed open. Her first semester flew by. Lena studied harder than anyone in her class. Her professors noticed her sharp questions. She joined the engineering club. She built a small group of quiet friends, students who didn't care about her past, only her dreams. But every Friday, without fail, she visited A-Tech. She'd bring fresh donuts to Patrick in the garage, check on her old prototype, and sometimes sit quietly with Raymond in his office, just sipping tea and talking about nothing and everything. Their bond grew slowly, not in rushed confessions, but in trust. They were building something, and both of them knew it. One evening, as rain tapped gently against the windows of A-Tech, Raymond called Lena into the conference room. The lights were dim. The projector was already on. She walked in, confused. "What's this?" He pointed to the chairs. "Sit." She did. The screen flickered, and photos began to appear. Photos of her old drawings, her garage sketches, her prototype stages, newspaper clippings, her TEDx moment, her first class in university, every memory, carefully collected. She covered her mouth. "Raymond, you kept all these?" He nodded. "Because I knew this was only the beginning." Then he stood beside her, hands behind his back. "I've spent years building companies, buying properties, signing deals. But nothing made me feel as alive as watching you grow." She turned slowly. He continued, voice softer now. "Lena, I didn't fall for you because you fixed my car. I didn't fall for you because you're smart. I fell for you because even when the world tried to break you, you remained kind." Her breath caught in her throat. "I know your past," he said, "and I love you not despite it, but because of it. And if you'll let me, I'd like to be part of your future." He pulled out a small velvet box, not flashy, not dramatic, just real. Lena's hands went to her chest. "Raymond," he knelt, not in some public gesture, but quietly, just the two of them, as the rain whispered outside. "Will you marry me, Lena Okafor?" Her knees gave way and she dropped to the floor with him, laughing through her tears. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, yes, yes." They hugged each other tightly, the city lights painting shadows on the walls, and in that moment, no title, no money, no status could define them. Only love. Real, earned, resilient love. Months later, the wedding was held in a simple garden surrounded by people who truly mattered. No tabloids, no flashing cameras. Patrick walked Lena down the aisle like a proud father. Ijeoma stood beside Raymond, beaming. The kids from the orphanage threw rose petals, giggling the whole time. Lena wore a simple lace dress. Raymond wore a white suit with no tie. They exchanged vows under a flowering tree. He said, "You were never a charity. You were my miracle," she said. "You gave me a home, but more than that, you gave me back to myself." And when they kissed, the entire garden erupted in applause. A year later, Lena's roadside solar toolkit was being used in 5 African countries. She opened a foundation, the Fixers Initiative, giving tools and training to young girls in technical fields. She gave speeches, wrote her first book, and every evening, no matter how big the headlines got, she returned home to Raymond, to a life they built, not on perfection, but on perseverance. One day, while sitting on a bench in the park, Raymond asked her quietly, "Do you ever miss the bridge?" She smiled and shook her head. "No." Then after a pause, she added, "But I carry its memory, because it reminds me that even in shadows, miracles find you." And Raymond simply nodded, pulling her close. Because she was right. Love didn't begin in ballrooms or boardrooms. Sometimes it began with a girl in broken slippers and a boy with a broken engine, meeting on a lonely road in the rain, and from that rust rose radiance.